A Minnesota judge calling out Democrat Governor Tim Walz for inaccurate statements in a massive pandemic fraud scheme. Walz says he was ordered to continue funding the government program called Feeding Our Future, which claimed to feed thousands of low-income children during COVID. But those children were never fed. According to indictments, there were no children. And this week, 48 people, most of them from the Somali community in Minnesota, were charged for their roles. Minnesota gubernatorial candidate for the Republicans, Dr. Scott Jensen, joins us now. There's a theme of this, Doctor, from Tim Walz not deploying with his unit, from Tim Walz not protecting the police precinct, from Tim Walz not shutting down what was known to be a fraudulent COVID scam.
No question about it, Pete. When the going gets tough, Tim Walz quits. He did it with the National Guard. He did it in 2005. He did it when it came time to protecting the streets of Minneapolis in 2020. And he did it when it came time to giving up the 3rd precinct. He just quits. But in this situation, he's gotten caught red-handed. This actually reminds me just a little bit of the flavor of Watergate. I think the big question is, what did Tim Walz know? And when did he know it? And when did he decide to try to use the judge as the scapegoat? Never thinking that Judge Guthman would come out and say, hey, you're not going to do this to me. I never told you to make those payments. You and your Department of Education made fraudulent payments even after you knew there was a problem, to the tune of some $250 million. And Pete, it may well be more than that. So I think Minnesotans are asking right now, we had this problem with Tim Walz and what he did with the daycare fraud, where he allowed the inspector general to be, if you will, put in another department, keep her 6-figure salary and no disciplinary action. We saw it with the homeless dollars not getting to where they should be. But this is of a scale that is unbelievable, yes. The largest in America. We've become a state of fraud under Tim Walz.
If you lock an entire state down, and then because of COVID in a draconian fashion, then you learn people are stealing from you and you don't do anything about it, doesn't feel like you deserve to keep your job. Now, speaking of keeping his job, shockingly, it's hard for me to imagine, polls have already opened in Minnesota. It's September 25th, and polls are tightening. I want to show a couple to our viewers. This one is from the Star Tribune. Now, the Star Tribune, consider the source. It's a far left-wing newspaper. Tim Walz had a lead of, they believed, it's a little confusing on the right side, 51 to 33 just a while ago. And now the race has tightened, according to the Star Tribune, of 7%. But I believe you even have other polls, Trafalgar Group, that show you within the margin of error. How have you tightened the race in Minnesota, which most people see as automatic for Democrats?
Well, despite the fact that Tim Walz and the PACs are spending over $1 million a week trying to denigrate me and demonize my running mate, Matt Burke, and I, they haven't made that much headway. We're 2.5 points behind. We're within the margin of error. It's basically a dead heat, according to Trafalgar. Paul, I think what's happening is people are realizing that Tim Walz isn't good for Minnesota. And people realize that what's on the budget is inflation, crime, education. Tim Walz will try to distract people into thinking something else, but it's not. And people are really coming out, Pete. They're providing support. They're going to drscottjensen.com, DRSCOTTJENSEN.com, and they're donating. And frankly, we are going to have a TV presence in October that is going to rival Tim Walz's.
It's a dead heat in Minnesota, which says a lot about the rejection of draconian Democrat policies and the alternative of a doctor who fought back against them. Dr. Scott Jensen, congratulations. Good luck on the home stretch of the race.
Thank you so much, Pete.
Great to see you. All right.